And we're live.
Hey, hey, hey. Billy W. Merritt back on a live stream on a Monday night. It's been a while. I do have Smith in the studio with me.
Hello.
We were getting ready for we've been cutting some podcasts with a lot of different podcasters all over the country. You can catch a lot of them on YouTube. I think the latest and possibly the greatest that we did was with Jeff Stearns, Connected Through Cars. That was a very good podcast.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed it. Jeff's a great host, he's a great guest. He's been a great guest. He's been a great interview. He's been a great interviewer. So I repaid the favor by being on his podcast. I think he has over 1,000 subs on YouTube now.
Is there?
Thubs. Thubs is a hard thing to get on YouTube. They're pretty tough. We've done really well on Facebook. Smith and I, we've been able to dominate Facebook. I feel like we do as good a job as most people. We do a better job than most people getting the eyeballs across all the different pages and accounts on Facebook. We are doing better with YouTube, and that actually landed us on quite a few podcasts. I'm very excited to have been featured on several people's podcasts, including Connected Through Cars. It's a Monday night. What time is it, Smith?
It is 5:11.
5:11. So, we haven't promoted this, so we'll just see what kind of audience Facebook can create for us. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. We were actually just finishing up a podcast, and we had a podcast scheduled for 5 o'clock, and they canceled on us. And we're like, we'll do our own podcast. So we had the studio, and our studio is much nicer than their studio. And I actually have a producer. The reason they had to cancel is because they don't have a producer. They're trying to half-ass things, so you can't do that in the podcast world. You got to go all in. So as Facebook is creating us a few audiences, I was asked to talk about on the last podcast I was on, I was asked to talk about sacrifice. Now, this is the most, in my opinion, the most misunderstood law. And I did say law. I didn't say theory. I said sacrifice is a law. A lot of people like to throw around the word sacrifice very trivially. Say that word. Can you say what I was trying to say?
Trivially?
Trivially. There you go. Trivially. It's not a trivial thing. Sacrifice is a very real thing. So there's two thoughts on what sacrifice is. Smith, or anyone watching, if you would be so kind, if you're watching, to give me your definition of sacrifice. I'm going to tell you, and I've studied this a lot, I'm going to give you a very detailed and studied definition of what sacrifice is. Smith, how would you define sacrifice? What does it mean to you?
Giving up something in the present to get something better in the future.
That's a good definition. That's a very accepted definition. Okay. Now, what you've actually described there, though, would be better described as ideal sacrifice. Okay. Because sacrifice is simply giving up one thing for something else.
Right.
We're sacrificing every single day. Right?
Not always effectively. Perhaps.
Well, see, now I'm going to be very technical, okay? So if I lose you, just go back and watch this again. Sacrifice is a law. You don't have to sacrifice effectively or non-effectively, that you can't do that. Sacrifice is going to make sure that it's effective, okay? You're either sacrificing in vain or with purpose. Without purpose or with purpose. You're sacrificing ideally, or you're being a victim of circumstance, and you're always sacrificing. It's always going to be, you can't not do it. Okay? You can't not do it. You're sacrificing every day. Okay, so to give you many examples, and I'll welcome any examples anybody want to talk about. Let's talk about fitness. Okay? To get in shape and to be fit and to be healthy and to have low blood pressure, low body fat percentage, high bone density, high muscle mass, you have to sacrifice your time, and you have to sacrifice your leisure, and you have to sacrifice rest, and you have to sacrifice part of your recreation. You have to sacrifice something. You have to make room for it. You can't have the fitness without the sacrifice. You also, on the exact same token, if you prefer eating great tasting sugary foods and drinking sodas and drinking lots of beer and resting all the time, and you prefer sitting on the couch and you prefer watching TV, then you're sacrificing fitness for those things that you like. You're still sacrificing. So life is sacrifice. You only have so much time. You only have so many hours. You only have so much room in your life. So if you're going to add something new, if you're going to add a new idea to your life, whatever that is, if it's a good idea or if it's a bad idea, you're sacrificing something to fit that into your life. What's a bad example? What's an example of adding something bad into your life and sacrificing, making room for something bad in your life?
Anything that's a waste of time or money, I guess.
What's an obvious one? It doesn't have to be specific about you. I'm not asking you for your dirty secrets.
Thank you.
But what is something that you see often that people make room for in their life that's just terrible, destructive, and bad?
Well, cigarettes is a pretty obvious one.
Cigarettes, hard drugs, heroin, methamphetamine, getting high all the time.
Right.
You are sacrificing health. You are sacrificing a clear mind. You're making room. You're sacrificing so many good things for something bad. Now, there is this theory about the law of sacrifice, okay? Now, sacrifice is a law. You're going to sacrifice something for something. Something has to be sacrificed to make room for something else. But there's a theory that sacrifice is giving up something of low value for something of high value. That's not the definition of sacrifice. That is ideal sacrifice. You can just as easily, and most people do, sacrifice good things for bad. Now, of course, people make good sacrifices very often as well. You know, every family I know sacrifices for their children. You know, sacrifices something for their children. But here's the thing: you're already giving up something. So just you get to choose what you sacrifice for. So it's not incorrect to say that giving up something of low value for something of high value is sacrifice. But it's also correct to say that giving up something of high value for low value is sacrifice. It's just a terrible idea. It's a bad sacrifice. So choosing your sacrifices and being in control of your sacrifices is the ideal situation.
Right. This intentional part of this, and I got this off of another podcast I was listening to. It's so important because they were talking about something that I had realized I had been doing lately when I, try to chop up my time between the time that I'm sacrificing to work constantly and the time that I'm getting in my leisure and, recharging. I think a lot of people, especially because of, this phone, a lot of people end up sort of just blending the two together. I know I was for a while because, you check your phone half the time that you're working on something, and then you go to have your hour of leisure time. And not only have you got this sort of snowball of guilt building up, but it's bleeding together because you're still doing the same thing. You're still checking your phone and you still feel like, well, I didn't work as hard as I should have. Now I should be getting something effective out of my leisure time. And you're not even recharging in your leisure time at that point.
All right. So let me explain to you what's really happening there. It's totally accurate what you're saying. But there's another law that's akin to the law of sacrifice that you're talking about there. Okay. And that's the law of discipline. Okay. Now, we'll go ahead and talk about discipline for a minute. Okay. Now, discipline is another very misunderstood law. Okay. First of all, here's the most misrepresented and misunderstood part about discipline is people with a lot of discipline, a lot of self-discipline, who really have a lot of self-control. And by the way, people are born with different degrees of self-control. It is easy for some people to go through life and never get drunk. It's easy for some people to go through life and never do drugs. It's easy for some people to go through life and never do anything exciting as well. It's just you're born with different degrees of things, right? It's easy for some people to go through life and never take a lot of chances, but that's not good either. My point is, you're not better off. You're not better than somebody just because you have a high level of self-discipline, okay? So, yes, it can be a very good thing. But now, self-discipline, or let me see, self-control, not self-discipline, two different things. Now, this is getting very technical. You may have to go back and watch this again. Self-control is you're not trying. You're not having to train. You're not having to practice. You're just able to say no. You're just, it's very easy for you to not eat sugary foods. Let's use that one. So we're not bringing up bad ideas of drug use and crack pipes, right? So everybody loves donuts. I've never seen anybody who doesn't love donuts. However, some people love donuts a whole lot more than other people. And I'm sorry, if you don't love donuts as much as the person who's really struggling with their weight, and they're craving them, and they give in, and you're not a better person because you don't crave donuts as much. The same can be said with drugs. The same can be said with alcohol. The same can be said with fitness. Some people like to work out. Some people hate it. You're not better off. Now, it doesn't give you an excuse if you're overweight and you crave donuts. But what I'm talking about right now is the self-righteousness that gets created in the egos of so many people who do have a lot of self-control. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I mean, I used to love chocolate, for example. I don't, it's not that I dislike sweets and stuff like that these days, but I've got a bit of a sweet tooth. I crash too hard. I don't enjoy it like I used to. And so it's not all that tempting for me.
So you have a lot of self-control when it comes to sweets and things like that. I know a lot of people who don't have that same control. A lot of young kids don't have that self-control. You're not a better person because you have a lot of self-control. Now, exactly. Let's move on to discipline. Discipline's a little more nuanced. Smith, I'll use me for instance. I love Holt's Bakery is the best bakery in the world. I've been all over the world. I love their chocolate covered donuts, and I love their chocolate eclairs. I desire them a whole lot more than most people. Now, for a long time, I gave into my desire and I ate them. So I had to start practicing self-discipline. And you have to start saying no to things and sacrificing. See, I told you it was very akin to discipline. You have to start sacrificing that wonderful mouth joy for something else. You have to make room. There's only so much room in my life. I can't eat my donuts and have a six-pack. Of course, I don't have a six-pack because I drink a six-pack. But anyway, that's another story. We'll talk about that sacrifice, that discipline later. We're still working on that. Now, my point is, just because I've gotten better at saying no to donuts doesn't mean I'm a better person or that I'm a better person. It means I make better choices than other people, right?
Right.
So it'd be very ill. It would be very wrong of me to look down on people who don't have the self-discipline that I have created. However, it doesn't mean that other people, Smith, what are you drinking over there? Is that some kind of energy drink?
Strawberry Fanta.
All right, that's trash. So
yeah, absolutely.
So that doesn't mean that you don't need to start practicing saying no to the Fanta trash drink, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, now that's one extreme. And you know, we live in a world, especially a country of extremes. Did you know that there's another mantra, another theory? There's another group out there that basically preaches that self-control and discipline's bad. Did you know that?
I think I have an idea of what you're talking about.
So here's why because they use the example that I just used where people become self-righteous and they think that they did something right. They think they're better than somebody because they don't struggle with those things. So, but just simply because they have a lot of discipline, a lot of self-control, and it's the group of, it's a wonderful group now. It's my people. The one love.
Right.
The God is love. Love is the answer. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think a lot of those people sort of pick up on like certain ideas from, for example, Hinduism and Buddhism, but they never get to the part where they do start talking about things like discipline.
Discipline's a good thing. And so my point is discipline doesn't make you superior, and discipline but it also doesn't make you a bad person, and not having discipline is not good. So like having discipline is not superior to, but it's a better state to be in than someone who doesn't have discipline. So you have to start working on discipline because there's only so much room in your life. You're only going to get what you want out of life if you're able to use discipline, self-discipline, to start making the good sacrifices instead of the bad sacrifices. Because you can go through life, if you never develop any discipline whatsoever, you can go through life as a victim. You can go through life and never get the desires of your heart because you're a victim of circumstance and you didn't create anything. Now you can't create everything. I'm not a name it claiming. We do create our environment. We create our reality to a huge degree, but there's sometimes it just bees that way and you have no control over it. What did Joey Arvidson say in the comments?
Joey Arvidson says, sacrifice is a choice. A person makes hundreds, if not thousands of sacrifices per day. The sacrifice is what you give up each time you decide to do one thing over another. You must make a series of good decisions after getting good information.
That's totally accurate. Yep. Not going to dispute any part of it. Life indeed is a sacrifice, and your choices decide that. Now, this is a key point, man. Here's who I want to talk to right now. All right. We have a few people watching. I want to talk to the person who has really struggled with self-discipline. I want to talk to the person who has wanted to make the right decision, but then made a bad decision. I want to talk to the person who has tried to be disciplined but failed miserably. I want to talk to the person who's written their goals down and not even come close to achieving them. I've been there. I've done that. I still do it. And that person who gets it right so many times, I guarantee you they got it wrong a whole lot more than they got it right. The key is persistence. The key is to write your goals down anyway. You fail, get up and do it again. 2007, I was writing my goals down. I didn't come close to what I wanted to do by 2008. Didn't come close. But you keep writing them down. You keep writing them down, and you keep writing down, and you keep trying to make the right sacrifices every single time, and it's going to work out in your benefit in the long run. It's definitely going to work out better than if you don't write them down at all, or if you don't make any sacrifices at all. Any choices at all, rather. If you don't try to develop, do not go through life and just you need to go with the flow sometimes, but you need to write down some goals and go for it.
I'd say that like that chaos sort of mentality that needs to be more like controlled chaos. Like instead of being willy-nilly, you you work the natural forces of the universe to your favor, not just let things happen.
True. That's also accurate. And talking about work, work is a form of sacrifice. So many people go to work for the sake of working. That's a mistake. If you want some advice, here's some advice. Go to work with a purpose. What's the end result? For some people it's retirement. For some people it's to get to the next level. For some people it's to find another opportunity. There's nothing wrong with any of those, but I feel like there is something wrong with going to work to get a paycheck on Friday. You need to go to work with a purpose. I think you'll be much better off if you go to work with purpose. So I'm going to recap. We're going to hop off of here. I'm going to go try to make some good decisions about what I'm going to do with the rest of my afternoon. Maybe I'll get it right. Okay. Sacrifice. You're always sacrificing. There's only so much you can do in a day. There's only so much you can do in a life. So when you decide to do something, regardless of how small you think it is, there's something else you could be doing. So just make sure that you're aware that you have a choice, that you can, whatever you're doing, you could be doing something good. I'm sorry. Regardless of what you're doing, you could be doing something different. You could be doing something better, or you could be doing something worse. If you can do something better, why not do that, right?
Right.
Discipline is not a bad thing. Doesn't make you superior to people, but it makes you more effective. Have goals, understand what sacrifice is, develop some self-discipline, and practice discipline. I wrote down some goals on June of this year, June 1st, and I failed pretty tough so far, but I got, most of the month left. So at the end of the month, maybe I'll share them with you and we'll see how I did. How about that? I'm going to ask me on July the 1st if I'm willing to share my goals, Smith, and I probably will. I don't keep very many secrets. Secrets make for a miserable life, but that's a whole nother show. So next time we'll talk about secrets. Thank you for joining us on a Monday morning, money afternoon show. We'll see you. It'll be next week because I got to go on the road this week.
Okay.
Go winning together this week. Sorry.
Got it.
All right. See